morning, Michael Robinson here on a foggy day which we're familiar with at Shelter Harbor. Wanted to do this week's tips from the pro on chipping and club selection. We have a lot of options. We typically have 3 or 4 wedges and we never know which ones to use and why. I wanted to just spend a few minutes clarifying which wedge does what and maybe which ones would be most helpful for you in and around our green complexes. So the first thing I want to start with is I'm going to hit a few of my highest lofted or my lob wedge. And I want to go through all of my wedges so that maybe you can see some of the difference in what they do in height that they go and distance that they roll. So I'm going to hit my first 2 shots are going to be my highest lofted lob wedge. And I just want to try and land them all in the same spot for the purpose of seeing the difference. So if I hit a lob wedge and I land it just on the green, we're going to see that it's pretty high and pretty soft and it rolls a little bit. Pretty consistent distance-wise. I'm going to go to my next wedge, which would be my sand wedge, and I'm going to try and make the same size swing and land it in the same spot and see if we see a difference. Then I'm going to go to my approach or my gap wedge, and I'm going to try and do the same thing. And then lastly, I'm going to hit a few of my pitching wedges. I'm going to try and land it again in the same place. So hopefully the video shows that you can see a clear difference between my lob wedge, my sand wedge, my gap wedge, and my pitching wedge. My sand wedge goes high and short and rolls a little bit. My gap wedge goes my sand wedge goes a little less high and rolls a little more, followed by my gap wedge and then my pitching wedge. So pitching wedge made it a very long way with the same size swing that I made with my sand wedge. I think really helpful here at Shelter Harbor, since we have such great playing conditions in and around the greens, is not utilizing the high soft one as often as I see people doing it. I would love to see people spend more time taking their pitching wedge and landing it a little short with a smaller swing and letting it trickle out towards the hole that we're playing at. So often I see players take a sand wedge or a lob wedge when they don't have a lot of green, trying to hit that perfect Phil Mickelson shot. When we execute, there's nothing better. But the margin for error is a lot higher. The reason being, when I take a sand wedge, I have to make a bigger swing, and when I make a bigger swing, I've got more room for error. So your miss hits with a sand wedge, if you miss one, are going to be a lot more penal than a small swing with a pitching wedge. I really try and utilize a lot of the fringe and the collar, since they're so firm and fast, to land shots and let them roll. I think so often we have the ability to use some of the fringe to slow our ball down after we've hit them. Just a touch technique, the biggest killer that I see that makes bad contact is when a player takes a club too far behind them or on this side of the club when they hit chip shots. When I have a small little swing and I'm not really using any weight transfer, I don't have time to get this club back in front of me. It's probably going to hit the ground behind it. So maybe you'll hit the ground behind it once and you'll say, well, I don't really want to do that, so now I stand up and I hit it a little bit thin. The best advice I can give you for good, clean contact would be making sure that this club never crosses this side of the club in my backswing. So I would love to see people chip in more of a straight line where the club head stays out and then it rotates through the shot just lightly with my body. Put away the lob wedge. See if you can use more of the pitching wedge or gap wedge and let shots land short and trickle onto those front pins. I'm going to turn the camera. I'm going to hit one more example over here that I think is a really good one to look at. So this is a really nice short-sided shot that I think a lot of people would be tempted to hit sand wedge with, or lob wedge. I'm gonna hit a little pitching wedge that rolls onto the green and almost goes in the hole. Hopefully you found this interesting. Go down to the short game area or the par 3 course and explore a little bit. See if you can make the same size swing with all of your wedges and figure out what the differences are between them. Put away the high loft, stick to something smaller, lower, on the ground. Let it trickle out. Have a great week. We look forward to seeing you here at the club playing some golf.